about 40 minutes away. And our site is part of the Grenoble Innovation Campus, where we have our synchrotron, the Institute Larry-Langevin, which produces neutron beams. But we have about 30,000 people on this site here, working between 8 different institutes, doing different types of science. We're on the international site down here, and then there's the French part of the site down here with the CEA, the CNRS, and other institutes and facilities. Like Sesame, which I'll tell you about in a second, the ESRAB is international. We're pleased to have 22 countries now on board. India joined a couple of weeks ago. Down here at a low percentage, but nonetheless they are an associate partner now in the ESRAB. We've got 13 members up here, the big ones being the usual countries, France, Germany, Italy, United Kingdom. We're very pleased as well that I said these places are intercultural hubs. We have 40 different nationalities in our staff contingent at the ESRAB, which is not bad. We have 6,500 users coming to use the ESRAB every year. Out of those 30,000 strong European community using light sources. We're a private civil company. Anybody can apply for beam time. Once you apply for beam time, like many of the other facilities across Europe, the access is then free. You apply, you get access based on scientific excellence, you go through, you publish the work, but everything is free. If you want to keep the results confidential, you give me a ring, you get your checkbook out, and then you pay for access, and then we work with industry. We generate about €2 million a year working with industry. We're going through an upgrade now at the ESRAB. I was responsible for setting this up. It's worth about €300 million. We've made extensions to the buildings, and 2nd of December next year, 2018, we will close down for 18 months. We'll chuck away the old accelerator, the old storage ring, or we'll install a new one. We come back to operation in about August 2020, with about 2 orders of magnitude increase in work that we can do. So even more X-rays, even more coherence, even better spatial resolution. These are most of the European light sources, the big ones. There's actually more than that. There's some that fit in this room here. But these are the principal ones, the ESRAB, DESI in Hamburg, this is Alba in Barcelona, I think I'm got it right. I think this is Swiss Light Source. But there's 9 covering different countries. And we're now pleased to welcome Sesame over in Jordan as one of these facilities. So Sesame is a synchrotron. It's a little baby one, and it's just starting operation. It's an intergovernmental cooperation again with, as I said, a group of countries, including Cyprus, many of which wouldn't normally collaborate or work together. So it's supported by UNESCO, and it's been developed under the umbrella of UNESCO, with funding coming from a variety of places, including the European community. It's based in Jordan, just here, not far from Israel, not far from a number of countries where there's interesting things happening at the moment. Open Sesame is a grant that's being given by the European Union worth €2 million. The aim of this is to transfer knowledge from the European facilities to help Sesame unlock its potential for the Middle East countries. So it takes time to build up communities that can use these synchrotron sources. But what we want to do is try and accelerate that for Open Sesame so that the facility can serve scientists in the Middle East. And when I was at the user meeting in December last year, the enthusiasm from the people that were present at that meeting, there was about 200 people there, was just amazing. And it was great to see staff, scientists from different countries sitting together and talking together, each other, again, sitting around tables where they wouldn't necessarily otherwise be able to meet. Our concrete objectives are, in the Middle East, there's not necessarily all the staff skills available to run a synchrotron, so we want to be able to try and enhance those by exchanging how we're working in the European facilities. Build up the capacity in Middle Eastern researchers to be able to optimally use this synchrotron that is coming into operation now. And to support Sesame as a research infrastructure in building its visibility and how funding agencies perceive the facility within the Middle East. I think we got €2 million. The project started in January this year, lasting to the end of 2019. This is the website, which will be active in about a week or so. These are the partners. They're widely spread across Europe. So I think there's 11 of us. Many of them are the national or international synchrotron facilities, but we've also got Instruct, which is a network across Europe for structural biology. We have the Cyprus Institute down here, which we're very pleased to have on board. Of course, Sesame itself, and CERN. CERN has been helped supporting Sesame a huge amount with provision of magnets, which are a critical part of the accelerator assembly, and other technologies. Although the ISREP is the coordinator of the project, the actual needs and the interest of the project are driven very much by Sesame. They're telling us what they want, and we build the project around their needs and expectations. So as part of this, we've got Wolfgang, who's part of the Training Advisory Committee of Sesame involved. The Deputy Coordinator is based at Sesame, and we have Giorgio and Yasser, two of the directors of Sesame, who are part of the project executive board of coordination. But because it's so linked to Sesame, Sesame's only just starting now. So they've only just successfully circulated electrons, putting energy in through RF into the electrons and keeping them circulating. The inauguration is on the 16th of May, when I think they're hoping to have had their first flight. So the machine commissioning is ongoing at the moment. This is January this year. The machine is gradually being commissioned. These represent, you can't see this, but these are different beam lines coming into operation. So then first we're having an infrared beam line, then X-ray fluorescence, and then there's some other beam lines that will come up as funding becomes available. They've already issued their first call for proposals, where they are asking for proposals for beam type in autumn this year. So what I'll do is just quickly go through some of the key objectives and a little bit more details about what we're trying to do. So one of the key things I mentioned was training Sesame staff. Again, staff in the Middle East for running a complex accelerator complex together with the beam lines, the computing and the instrumentation. It's not necessarily fully existing today. So here this is really to try and get the optimal use out of the facility. And there is funding for 65 staff exchanges between Sesame and going out to the European facilities. That's starting already. So there's 39 staff going from Sesame to Europe and 26 from Europe to Sesame. And actually, the number of Sesame staff is quite low at the moment. I think there's only about 60. So the actual percentage of Sesame staff that benefit from coming out to Europe is very significant. And this is going to be focused in areas, things like safety, beamline instrumentation, cryogenics, sample environments, user administration, how to actually run the facility with users. As I said, at the ISREP we have 6,500 coming through per year. So the administration and the travel and the work behind that is not insignificant. A key goal as well is to actually tell and teach researchers within the Middle East, members of Sesame and beyond, how they can actually use the X-ray beams, the infrared beams that are going to be generated at Sesame. So for this, we're arranging a number of thematic schools, which will hopefully touch about over 100 researchers from the Sesame region, where we'll be focusing on different topics that are relevant, especially to the Middle East. A key part, this is sort of a little bit different. The key part of these research infrastructures is actually being visible, showing off what they can do as intercultural hubs of the training, because there's a lot of money going into these places, and the impact that they have is very, very important. And especially in the case of Sesame, given its specific role, specific set of members, the visibility of what it is doing and what it is achieving in terms of the science and bringing countries together is very important. And we'll also be hopefully having an impact in the communications and media training for the Sesame staff and their users. At the inauguration, the BBC is expected, there's French broadcasters, German broadcasters, so it's important that Sesame can actually enable the best use of this kind of work. These are some of the people actually running this, because it actually does very much work, which is good. Nazari's got an extremely challenging task with the exchanges and how we organize it. And these are focused, as I said, on a number of different areas, exchanging going from beamline techniques through to the commissioning, general skills in technicians, in how to run a cryogenic plant, how to run and install X-ray optics, safety as well. These things are not necessarily trivial to run from a safety perspective. There's an accelerator, there's vacuum, removing windows, there's all sorts of risks involved, and this also is a key topic for working with. As well as I mentioned, the user office and user administration. The schools are being run by Miguel, who's the scientific director of Alba in Spain, with Giorgio, who's the Italian director of Sesame. There's 4 thematic schools. One of the first coming up, and it's being developed at the moment. We're very pleased it's going to be hosted in the, we hope, we're 95% certain, depending on what happens, that it will be hosted within the Great Library in Alexandria. And this will be focused on cultural heritage and ancient artifacts, which is a huge topic in the Middle East, as well as in Cyprus, I think, where synchrotron sources have an important impact in this area. This area did not exist as synchrotron sources 10 years ago. And it's jumped like this as scientists working in this area realize the power of what the synchrotrons can do to look inside materials, to look at the chemistry. Well, that's important because some of the first beamlines coming up at Sesame are infrared, X-ray powder diffraction, and X-ray fluorescence. And these are key techniques for looking inside and around ancient artifacts. Everyone on biological and biomedical applications, especially IR infrared microspectroscopy, which allows you to look at tissues and individual cells and see what goes on. Diamond's been doing some beautiful work on individual cells, looking for cancer signatures using infrared spectroscopy, trying to identify cells that are cancerous. Structural biology is a huge area of synchrotrons. A large chunk of the case for Diamond in the United Kingdom was based on structural biology alone. We sell €500,000 worth of services for drug discovery every year at the SRAF. Another important one is environmental sciences, where again the topics of the first beamlines coming up at Sesame have a direct impact in this area, where you can look at things like recycling, better use of raw materials and pollution, and doing speciation of elements. So things like cultural heritage and for ancient materials, the key things about synchrotron light is non-invasive. If you go to the hospital and have your X-rays on your hand, they have to chop your hand apart to look inside. The X-rays can look through and they're non-destructive. So you can put a whole object onto the beamline and look through it. We have a very high chemical sensitivity because we've got a lot of photons measuring what's going on. We can focus the beam down for a high 7 meter shot. Maybe there was a time. Maybe. We can focus the X-ray beam, so there's very high spatial resolution. We can get down to 20 nanometers or so using X-ray beams at the SRAM. So you can map them. You can do elementary mapping on a very fine spatial resolution. And you can also probe with a huge range of techniques. So you can do X-ray powder diffraction, but then go to another beamline and add infrared spectroscopy to it as well. Just a few examples. This is work that's been done by Marine over at the SRAF. This is Chinese porcelain. Well, one of the questions was, how did they actually produce the blue color? What's the exact chemistry behind it? And you don't want to be chopping these things up to look inside. And using 3D element mapping, you can look through the glaze and understand the chemistry of what's going on with the cobalt blue coloring. So you can look at the speciation of the cobalt, but you can do that in 3 dimensions at a very high spatial resolution. This is the Van Gogh's sunflowers. It's very yellow. The yellow paint is based on lead chromates. And according to the different mixes of lead chromate, you can get different types of yellow color. It's also been known for centuries. But the lead coloring degrades with time. So what we now see in Van Gogh's picture is not how he painted it in, I don't know when it was, 1800 or something. And part of the problem, as I mentioned, is that with light, the colors change. Only subtly, but it can dramatically change the look of the painting. So this means that if we could detect what the chromate, how it's aged, you could artificially color the painting and understand what it would have liked when you did it. But also importantly, you can look at conservation and try and optimize the color of the lights that are illuminating the painting so they have less damage in time for the pigments. And that's an important piece of work in terms of conservation within art galleries, where you want to ensure these paintings have longevity and you keep the coloring as accurately as you can, as it was when it was first made. This is similar work, not from something that's hundreds of years old, but something that's only now half a century old, where the polymers used in objects from the 1950s are very fragile. And they also age poorly, and there's understanding there's what's happening with the chemistry using X-ray beams. An older example, this is a papyrus that was burnt a long time ago in one of the, I think one of the volcanic eruptions. And you can't touch this, right? This is burnt paper. If you touch it, it crumbles, you lose the information. Using X-ray technology, they looked at the ink to understand what the chemistry of it is, what the structure of it is. They've also done 3D tomography, you may have seen this, where they've done 3D, like at hospitals, you do a CT, right? You get a 3D picture of your hand or whatever it might be. We've done that at very high resolution, but because of the structure of the ink, you can actually reconstruct that and start reading that papyrus from the inside out without having to destroy it. There's no other way to read that. That's an immense computing job, actually, because actually harvesting the data there doesn't take very long. But then organizing that so you can actually read on the rolled up papyrus and try and reconstruct the writing is computationally not more trivial. There'll be young researcher training. Hercules is a well-known name within the research infrastructure world, and there'll be a specific 2-week course at Sesame later in the project. And we're also just launching now opportunities for researchers, young researchers from the Middle East, members of Sesame, to come and visit for between 4 and 12 weeks in European facilities. And that's now actually open. Miguel's just opened the call. And we open from, I think, the 1st of May, where there's up to just under 10K available for people to come over and visit our facilities. It's kind of more my domain. So, again, when you think of any type of material, even if it's like sort of trivial, like ice cream or margarine, the work we do in the facilities can help industrial innovation. So at the ISRF, we've got about 150 clients, some of whom don't allow us to say who they are. These are some of the names that allow us to say who they are. You might recognize some of the names there. But industrial innovation at these facilities is growing enormously, and the pressure from our funding agencies to work more, I don't know what it's like within the computational world, but certainly in our world, there's pressure from our funding agencies to work more with industry and show more economic impact, and show more relevance to applied research. So at the ISRF, we do €2 million a year, and we estimate about 30% of the peer-reviewed research has some link to industry. A few weeks ago, last week, in fact, I think it was, 21st of April, we had Johnson Matty, who's just here, who will be using the ISRF on 3 beamlines on the same day, which has never happened before. We were really pleased about that. They had a proprietary paid-for access. They also had some academic access in their case, looking at different types of catalysts. So one of the important aspects of Sesame will be international industrial exploitation. So we will be working with them to build a contact list and then work out to relevant industries in the Middle East. An obvious one will be petrochemicals because of the, obviously some of the work is being done in the Middle East, but there'll be others as well. There'll be a workshop in winter 2019. An important part of what will happen in Open Sesame is direct link to the Cyprus Institute, where a lot of the work I just showed you there is going to be an enormous amount of training materials. The outreach to the students, the outreach to the researchers, the outreach to media and what have you. And Cyprus Institute is promised with a deliverable soon. Harry, of course, we have a deliverable milestone piece in April where the warehouse should be at least functional in some way, which is now right. So there's Cyprus Institute is building a warehouse to deliver this technology across the Sesame members and beyond, so that this will be available during our project, but also has existence after the project is finished. So all that training material can be distributed through an online warehouse. And realistically, amongst the Sesame members, I think Cyprus is the only realistic host for this, given the internet bandwidth and the technology here. So some of the files will be quite large, there'll be some videos, there'll be PowerPoint and other things, but small scale compared to big data. The last thing is communication strategy. CERN has already been working on this with Sesame for a number of years, and James, who you saw just flash up there, 50% of his time is dedicated to supporting Sesame's outreach activities. And so this is actually quite important because Sesame has a huge visibility in terms of the world media. And part of the work that we're doing is trying to build a pilot film by this UK production company, which will hopefully lead into a full-scale documentary on Sesame with a major broadcaster somewhere in the world. Cyprus is also doing the roadshows. So part of the important aspect of getting the message out about Sesame is to go to the universities within the members of Sesame and tell them about the opportunities of what's going on. This is much more in a general way. It's not the targeted training that we've talked about, but here this is one roadshow event of each Sesame member, although Bahrain is now not part of the roadshow list at the moment. Bahrain, I think, has stepped back from involvement in Sesame, so we have an opportunity to go somewhere else as well there. So I think Sesame will advise us perhaps where we might go, because they're also targeting other countries in the Middle East that could become involved. I think well, there's a number of possibilities there. So here there's a presentation of Sesame and what's going on with Sesame, and importantly, how to access, how does it work for the students and the researchers that might want to have an access. I think you've had one in Egypt so far, and there'll be other ones coming up. A key part of these research infrastructures is how to run them. It sounds a bit trivial and naive, but the administration of running these things on an international basis is not easy. Having young, trained people moving up into these positions is an important aspect of the value, actually, of these research infrastructures. So part of the work that's being done here by DESI is the German synchrotron based in Hamburg. We're looking at training the next generation of administrators, because they're the people that in 10 to 20